What's up everybody? What's up everyone? Welcome back to another bonus video. If you didn't watch it, my last video earlier in the week was talking about horror, and more specifically FNAF, Five Nights at Freddy's. But what I found while researching the video and afterwards was that a lot of people weren't actually very aware of FNAF or have major negative connotations for it, despite it being a very popular games franchise. So I thought today, hey what the hell, I have some free time, let me make a video explaining this very simple, very easy to understand storyline. I know there will be some of you that have very little interest in this topic, but I do ask, give it a chance, and if you don't like it, well, at least you helped me out. I hope there'll be at least a few of you who are interested, and if you are, I would say to you, yo, check out some of my previous content. At least watch this one, am I right? Okay, on with the video. Now I want to get everyone up to speed just so we're all on the same page, so I'm going to be methodical, I'm going to be tactical, and I'm hopefully going to take us through this at a perfect pace. Let's go! Five Nights at Freddy's is an indie horror game incorporating 80s and 90s nostalgia, released on August 8th, 2014, which released to initial pretty good success, which then quickly exploded into mega massive success with the release of a YouTube video from an up-and-coming YouTuber known as Markiplier. Markiplier's channel exponentially grew in congruence to Five Nights at Freddy's, until now where he is one of the biggest gaming creators on the platform. But back in 2014, things were a lot simpler. Titled Scariest Game in Years, this video was most people's first introduction to FNAF, but after it came many more videos. Let's Plays for FNAF invaded YouTube at shocking speed, and the success was received very gratefully by one Scott Cawthon, the indie game developer of Five Nights at Freddy's. I love this guy, by the way. Initially making Christian indie games, Scott had a few successes, but things were mostly looking dour. His last few games have been going downhill in terms of reception, until it finally reached rock bottom with Chipper & Sons Lumber Company, a game which actually isn't too bad, but was received very poorly. Critics did not like the game, saying that the main characters seemed stiff, soulless, scary even, as if they were creepy animatronics. This and the other failures made Scott fall into a depression, but out of that came a drive to release one last game. A final FU to these dumbass critics. Oh, you're gonna say my characters look like animatronics? Well, maybe that's what I'll do. And that's what he did, taking the criticisms of his last game and making something truly special. The concept of Five Nights at Freddy's is simple. You're the night guard, it's your work week, 5 nights, 5 shifts. You're working in a small-time restaurant for kids called Freddy Fazbear's Pizza. You get phone calls every night from the friendly resident phone guy, voiced by Scott Cawthon, about stuff you may or may not be interested about, namely, how to survive this death trap, because you're not alone, and you're not going to be facing the usual dangers you might assume, because if you open up your cameras, you will see on the show stage 3 animatronics, Chica, Bonnie, and Freddy. Now these guys do tend to get a bit quirky at night. What they want to do is get into your office and stuff you into a suit, which results in death. Your defenses include a door, a light, and that's it actually. Oh, and there's a 4th animatronic called Foxy that's out of order in Pirate's Cove. This truly is a genius idea. It's a small game, an indie game, and yet it works so well. Just as I pointed out in my previous video, these guys are basically weeping angels. You very rarely see them move. Instead, they jump from place to place while you're not looking. You have cameras all around the building to keep track of them, aside from the kitchen cam, and yet you can still hear sounds from it. What is she doing in there? As I mentioned earlier, Five Nights at Freddy's released at the perfect time, coinciding with a huge wave of releases also incorporating this 80s and 90s nostalgia. The one that comes to mind for me is Stranger Things, something that shares a lot of similarities with this franchise the more I think about it. Freddy Fazbear is a riff on Chuck E. Cheese, which is one of those places I look at and wonder, how did anybody like this? Something which you will also frequently question about the children in-universe while playing this game, which is part of the reason why it works so well. These characters are perfectly in the uncanny valley, a mixture of friendly looking child mascots and soulless murderous, well, we'll get into that. The angles themselves do a good job of showing how threatening and terrifying these things can be, showing them moving around, hiding. The atmosphere in this place is crazy. This incredible shot of Bonnie at the end of the hallway is so genius, because when you're in the game, looking around, you can barely see him, and missing him is something you don't want to do. Freddy hides in the camera. Most of the time you can't even see him. He even hides in your room, waiting for you to turn to the right before jump scaring you. Okay, maybe this is a personal thing to me, but Chica is the scariest one. There is something so unnerving about this to me. Foxy is unique, not just in gameplay, but also in the fact that he is the only one to break the rule of movement. He slowly makes his way out of Pirate's Cove before gunning it down the hallway. The movement's looking janky and unnatural, and trust me, when you open up the cams to see this thing running towards you, holy! Occasionally, you might get these hallucinations. It's me, and these screens. This leads us to our next point, and probably the most important thing to the context of FNAF, the secrets. Hidden throughout the game, there are clues, hints to the grand lore of the game, something that will become more than just a mainstay in the series and games to come. But in this game, it's relatively simple. The backgrounds of the pizzeria sometimes change, drawings appear on the wall, newspaper clippings. These things tell a story of a missing children's incident. 5 kids vanished in Freddy Fazbear's Pizza. Coincidentally, around this time, the animatronics then began to reek and have fluids come out of them. Doesn't take a genius to put 2 and 2 together. Guys, I think those kids are in those robots. Stuffed in the suits, it is implied that these robots are possessed by dead kids, explaining why they play these games, why Freddy, despite being a male character, hides out in the female toilet, and the spirits are angry. Another detail this explains is the horrifying groaning sounds you hear when an animatronic is outside your office. This sound is horrible. I think part of the reason why Chica scares me so much is this sound paired with this image. Just haunting. And there also might be a secret 5th one called Golden Freddy, who can appear as a ghost and crash your game. Things aren't looking good for Freddy Fazbear's. Along with this hidden storyline, through the tapes of Phone Guy, we also have a more direct series of events, which leads to Phone Guy's sad and predictable death.
Oh, hey, wow, day 4. I knew you could do it. Hey, listen. I may not be around to send you a message tomorrow. It's been a bad night here for me. I'm kind of glad that I recorded my messages for you when I did. Hey, do me a favor. Maybe sometime you could check inside those suits in the back room. I'm going to try to hold out until someone checks. Maybe it won't be so bad. I always wondered what was in all those empty heads back there, you know. Oh no.
Damn, I must say, off script, this scene is done so well. Scott Cawthon says he finds the Phone Guy cringy because he thinks he did a bad job, but I couldn't disagree more. I think this is probably my favourite piece of voice acting in the series. Phone Guy dies on night 4, so the phone call we get on night 5 is... just about what you'd expect. You finish your 5 nights, get a check for $120? This place sucks. But also, it says your name, Mike Schmidt. Important. What's all important is that from this paycheck, we can determine the year this game takes place in by finding out the minimum wage and doing some quick calculations. We find out that this game in the timeline takes place in 1993. Earlier in the Phone Guy calls, Phone Guy references a byte of 87. This was the main mystery of the game, so what better place to go next for a sequel?
Hello. Well, if you're hearing this, then chances are you've made a very poor career choice.
Five Nights at Freddy's 2 released practically instantly after the first, with it being dropped on November 11th of that same year, 2014. Building up to the release of the game, Scott released many teasers, something he'd do for basically every game, becoming tradition for the franchise. You could tell the enthusiasm and passion was there from him. All engines would go, and yeah, this game was another mega smash hit. Scariest game ever made by Markiplier. Only a few views on this one. As I said earlier, despite having this massive 2 plastered all over it, and the frequent mentions in the teasers of grand reopening and new animatronics, this game was a prequel being set in 1987. And if the paycheck didn't give it away, the animatronics are still allowed to walk around during the day, something which they are definitely not allowed to do in FNAF 1, as well as, you know, Phone Guy being alive. Bit of a big hint that. This news article at the end talks of this venue also closing, with the new animatronics being scrapped. This was presumably after the Bite of 87, however the old ones are being kept for use in this smaller location in the future, setting up the first game. Smaller location? Well, that's the thing. FNAF 2 is pretty big, with over double the characters of the original game and much more space. FNAF is bigger and bolder, with only one thing notable being missing: any doors. Yep, gone are the doors, and now long dark hallways are in vogue. Personally, I'm not really a claustrophobic guy, so this one is a bit more effective to me. You instead are armed with a flashlight to shine at these silly little goobers who want to stand at the end of your hallway. Oh, silly geese, be gone with you. Also, you have an empty Freddy Fazbear head, which is very good at tricking these dumbass robots, apart from one. And that one. This one is called Puppet, and also someone very important. This guy lives in the music box, and if you value your life, you'll never want to see him get out of it. Your primary mission throughout these nights is keeping this box wound. But apart from that, basically same as usual. Survive till 6 AM, do your 5 nights, get your measly paycheck of $108? That's a slave wage. And then maybe if you're feeling silly with it, come back for a 6th and 7th night. I'll have to get back to you on that. But if you do beat it, you get extra lore, which, just to warn you in advance, there is a lot in this game, because this is when these games go into overdrive. Before we were on sicko mode, now we're on fucko mode. Okay, number one thing. One of these new guys did the bite of 87. The old guys, Bonnie, Chica, Freddy and Foxy, are still in the back, looking a bit withered. Oh my god, what's wrong with your face? And being used for parts, and are now replaced with these new toy animatronics. I don't know about you guys, but my bet's on Mangle. I don't think this thing should be allowed. What the hell is this? Take it apart, put it back together. This thing definitely took someone's frontal lobe. Cool little design detail here. If you look closely, you see Mangle has 2 heads, because originally it was a pirate like Foxy and had a parrot. Outside of the toys and the withereds, there's the puppet like we said. Golden Freddy's back from the last one, still being as ghostly as ever. We got this fucker, Balloon Boy. Then you, as Easter eggs, see this random endoskeleton that's also in the puppet's box, JJ under your desk, which won't do anything, and these geezers, Shadow Freddy and Shadow Bonnie. These guys are hallucinations, and to this day, people still don't really know who they are, but my guess is that these are nightmares, imaginary and just not real, at least in this game. But now onto the cutscenes. First of all, there's these, which are, as you can see, in the FNAF 1 location, right here, and not the FNAF 2 location, seen here. However, the puppet is here, somehow. The puppet was also seen in the FNAF 1 location prior, on the walls, if you remember from earlier. But those aren't the only cutscenes. Calling back to the 80s nostalgia, on dying you have a chance of spawning these Atari-style death minigames, each of them telling their own story and creating the baseline of the full Five Nights at Freddy's lore. These are like gospel. First of all, there's this one. Take cake to the children. You are Freddy and you are giving cake to the children. Wow. Very nice. However, there is one child outside. You watch as a purple car pulls up outside, a purple man comes out and kills the child before getting jumped at by the puppet. This is the action that sets in motion the rest of the franchise. This dead child possesses the puppet, leading us to the next game. Foxy Go Go Go. You are Foxy, running out to the children. You do this a couple of times before this purple figure, this refined gentleman, appears. A purple guy, if you will, but not a purple man. Purple guy. Then when Foxy goes out to perform this time, this takes us to our next game, Give Gifts, Give Life. The puppet finds these dead kids and tries to give them gifts. It sadly doesn't work, so it does the only thing it could think of. It stuffed the bodies inside the suits. This is what possessed the animatronics. This is why they're so messed up. And also, SAVETHEL. You're walking around as a robot, then Purple Guy comes running at you, and you're dead. So there's a lot of lore, but we've still got a lot more in Phone Guy messages, so let's do a quick fire round. Phone Guy says there was a place before Freddy Fazbear's Pizza called Fredbear's Family Diner. Presumably, this is where the first kid who possessed the puppet died due to the smaller location and only Freddy being there. Besides, he's gifting cake, which is usually what Chica does. However, these 5 die in Freddy Fazbear's. Just to make it clear, these places are different, even though now Freddy Fazbear's owns Fredbear's Family Diner. On night 6, Phone Guy says that someone used a suit in the back, a yellow one. Now none of them are acting right. Not said in the Phone Guy calls, but I think it's important to say, these old animatronics are from a Freddy Fazbear's Pizza before this new one, which is where the children died and possessed the robots, which are now in disrepair that then get fixed for the first game. My theory on why the toy guys go haywire is that parts were used in them from their possessed counterparts, which makes them go crazy. Although it could just be their facial recognition technology. That is hilarious, by the way. So just to keep you up to speed, the current timeline is looking like this. Fredbear's first, then this unseen Freddy Fazbear's, then the grand reopening of FNAF 2, then FNAF 1. Okay, well I think I wrapped that up pretty well, so on to FNAF 3. 3. FNAF 3 released on the 2nd of March 2015, 4 months after the previous. Just like the previous two, this one released to massive success, although some noted that the formula was getting maybe a little tired. However, in my opinion, FNAF 3 is quite a lot different to its predecessors, while still being definitely recognizable. Just like the previous, teasers galore have been released and fans were eagerly waiting for the latest and possible final FNAF game. FNAF 3 takes place in not a pizzeria. Instead, we've got a bit of a time skip, because we are now in contemporary times and we're feeling a little bit nostalgic for the 80s. Very self-aware, Scott, you lovable bastard. Welcome to Fazbear Frights, a niche horror attraction based on the rumors and folktales around the tragic events in the 80s and 90s at Freddy Fazbear's Pizza. Someone's been going around collecting stuff, memorabilia, masks, cosplays, etc., and bring them together in this highly flammable place. No, seriously, this place is a death trap. You work here as, surprise surprise, night guard, doing your shift for 5 nights. You get the first phone call and...
Hey, glad you came back for another night. I promise it'll be a lot more interesting this time.
Who the fuck is this? Well, actually, this is the phone dude, also played by Scott Cawthon. I love this guy, but he has found some vintage audio cassette tapes which brings back the old reliable phone guy, now with 100% added lore. Night 1 is a cakewalk. This is gonna be a breeze. Night 2, however, well, they found one. A real one. What this means is that these guys, whoever these guys are, found an animatronic, and what better to do with it than to just dump it in this horror attraction? What could possibly go wrong? This little guy is called Springtrap, and throughout the course of the game, you're spoon-fed little droplets of information on this guy. But that's for later. First of all, the gameplay. For Springtrap, it's the same as before. He's a weeping angel. He comes to get you, sometimes through the vents, sometimes the old-fashioned way. But you might be thinking, only one guy? This finna be a breeze. Sadly, as I mentioned earlier, this place sucks. Your system, despite being supposedly in modern day, run on Windows 98 and crash every 2 seconds, which is manageable. However, what also crashes is the ventilation system, which makes you have either heat stroke or make you see hallucinations. This way, the gang's all here. Freddy, Chica, Foxy, Balloon Boy, Puppet, Mangle. No Toy Freddy though. Shame, I love that guy. These animatronics are all hallucinations and not real, but they can cause you to black out, letting Springtrap get closer to you and, well, kill you. They're all very burned out and they kinda look like melons. Maybe that's just me, I don't know. Personally, these jump scares are very effective, but I know a lot of people weren't satisfied with them. This Balloon Boy one always got me, as well as this Chica one, but you already know about me and Chica. Good old Golden Freddy also makes an appearance, hiding in your office. What a creep. Anyway, now I've touched on the gameplay, I can talk about the story, because buckle in, there is a lot. Phone Guy spends each tape talking about spring locks, this new and awesome technology that allows animatronic suits to be worn and act as animatronic and suit. One problem, they're unstable as hell. If you've already figured out who Springtrap is from this one piece of information, good for you. You earn a gold star. Anyway, these spring locks have been known to clamp down due to moisture or like breathing wrong, and as you can imagine, all the locks breaking would then immediately crush the person inside, and I don't think things would be looking alright for them, let's just say that. Phone Guy says that after an unfortunate accident involving simultaneous spring lock failures at a sister location. Holy shit, guys. These suits have been discontinued. Also mentioned are the safe rooms. Invisible to the cameras and animatronics, these rooms are places meant for staff only. These got boarded up after the accident. Now onto the cutscenes. We're back in this style, back in the old Freddy's location. This layout exactly matches FNAF 1. However, this building is decaying, broken. Water, rain, rats everywhere. This place ain't open to the public. Each night you move as a different guy, exploring the building led by Shadow Freddy, until... Now, before we get ahead of ourselves and people try tying together knots, this Shadow Freddy is not the same as this Shadow Freddy. This Shadow Freddy is not real, a nightmare. This Shadow Freddy is Purple Guy in the suit, luring them to the safe room where he can enter and they cannot. Shadow Freddy and Shadow Bonnie are not people who died in Springlocks in the sister location. These silhouettes are not Springlocks. Sadly, this theory is deconfirmed. You may disagree with me and you may think it doesn't make sense that this Shadow Freddy is different to this Shadow Freddy, who's also different to this Shadow Freddy, spoilers, but it is also just the truth. For those who say, well, there isn't a Golden Freddy suit in the back room, Phone Guy says there is, so confirmed! Anyway, at the end of the last night, we are now dead spirits who go to the back room and find Purple Guy. He jumps into a Springlock suit, starts laughing, and then... well, to be honest, bitch ass should have seen that one coming. Purple Guy is Springtrap. I am shocked. This series is not over. At the end of night 5, we get a newspaper clipping that Fazbear Frights burned down. But if you brighten the image, Springtrap still lives. Bad ending. Yeah guys, we have multiple endings in this one. To get the good ending, you need to touch this random arcade machine, touch this random poster, put your phone number into the wall, get jiggy with it. These little goofs and gaffs take you to mini games. But you aren't supposed to beat the mini games. What are you, an idiot? You're supposed to glitch out of all of these until you find a dead spirit and give them a big birthday cake. Well, isn't that nice? This all leads to Happiest Day, where everyone comes around and gives this child, who wears a golden Freddy mask, his birthday cake, giving him his happiest day. All the spirits are laid to rest, and good ending. And the story ends there. Lol. So you remember how I said earlier that people weren't satisfied with the jump scare? Well, neither was Scott. So he decided, fuck it, let's make another one. And this time, we'll make it scary. 23rd of July 2015, FNAF 4. After several teaser images, hype was at an all-time high, each of them asking, was it me? And in the source code to all of these teasers were the numbers 87. I think it's time we finally discover the answer to the mystery that started it all. Who did the bite of 87? Just kidding. Anyway, the game released and from the start you could tell things were different. First of all, where is the pizza? Long gone are the days of being a night guard, because now we are stuck in a kid's room that is way too big, with way too many doors, in this house that is too scary. It's that house, by the way, from the title sequence. Gameplay wise, things are also different. There are no cameras, you're in a house, so of course not. But also, get ready for this, you can move. This is mind blowing. Moving? In FNAF? That'll be the day. In this game, there are only the main four, straight from the first game. Bonnie, Chica, Freddy and Foxy. Bonnie comes from the left, Chica from the right, Foxy runs out at you, and Freddy sneaks into your room. There's even a phone, a fan, and if you can distort the audio, you can hear Phone Guy in the background saying something. What's notable though are these animatronics, because there is no way these guys are real. I mean, look at them. These guys are called the Nightmare animatronics, and yeah, they live up to their name. These guys are not real. The knights are not real. In this game, they are a nightmare, and that is made pretty clear throughout. I mean, surely. These guys are called the Nightmares. The logic of how things work is so dreamlike. There is no way that this is not meant to be a nightmare. But then again, this is where things get a bit murky with everything. Let's try and get through it. Okay, so this game tells its story pretty straightforward. You play between nights as a crying child who's bullied by his brother in a Foxy mask and has an imaginary friend, Golden Freddy. Or should I say Golden Fredbear, because this kid doesn't go to Freddy Fazbear's, instead he goes to Fredbear's family diner. Yes, that place we've always heard about. Yes, this game is also a prequel. Maybe. But I thought FNAF 2 was the bite of 87, you may be saying. Well, as I said, things get a bit complicated from here on out. At this point, theories had exploded on YouTube, as much as Let's Plays had. With this game especially, the lore went hog wild. So anyway, you, crying child, well, you just have a great time all week as we count down until the party. And it's at this party where the brother in his Foxy mask decides to put his younger bro in Fredbear's mouth. This goes not so well. Was that the bite of 87? Here is Fredbear, who is different from Golden Freddy as seen by the different colour, but I will say now that the differentiation between them is arbitrary, because they're basically the same and throughout all of the games they share the same role. Here is Spring Bunny, who as we see later is worn by Purple Guy when he goes on his killing spree, and then even later on when he becomes Springtrap. This suit is what he used to lure kids to the back and was the yellow suit in the back Phone Guy mentions in FNAF 2, not Golden Freddy. We get one final cutscene with Crying Child where he is with his friends. We hear other voices from outside like his brother and his imaginary friend, who I would just say now, most people thought at the time was actually the puppet, but it's most likely the boy's father. And some people have theorized that it is another spirit possessing Golden Freddy, and then this kid possesses Fredbear, and then the two spirits possess both of these guys, which, yeah, I should have eased you into that, but that's just a quick look into where we've yet to go. Back in the gameplay of FNAF 4, things change up in the final night, where you fight the raid boss, Golden Fredbear. This guy is terrifying. After being the 5th night, you get a Nightmare Night, where you fight the true final boss, Nightmare, also known as Shadow Freddy, but not that Shadow Freddy, all that one, all that one, all that one, all that one. Actually, maybe that one. Implies that this is the shadow from the animatronics that gives him his nightmares. Now, whether you play as the crying child or his brother is up for debate, but I will say that behind you on your bed, there is a chance to see an IV or pills, or other things usually seen in a hospital. And with that, I will leave it up to you to decide for yourself. And then we hear a flatline. the child dies. Now this time period is where lore went crazy, and if you beat the final challenge of this game, you are greeted with a literal mystery box, one which cannot be opened and to this day is still locked and left unanswered, with this text being its only explanation. Okay, this is one of the only things in this franchise which I call bullshit on. However, there are also a lot of other Easter eggs, namely this one with purple guy putting a suit on another employee, or stuffing a kid? Nope, I'm like 99.9% sure he is putting an employee in a suit. Wait. What? Yeah, okay, time to introduce some elements outside the game. Game theory, otherwise known as Matthew Pat. Now, back when I used to watch this guy, he was real big into the FNAF lore situation. I don't know if he still is anymore, but these videos were what I remember. He was so big, in fact, that while doing a live stream with other YouTubers trying to figure out the lore, Scott Cawthon himself began updating his website in real time with clues to solve the game. Lore! However, these clues, well, they paint a weird picture. What is seen in the shadows can easily be misunderstood in the mind of a child. In the minigame, why is the toy of Chica missing her beak? Okay, what? Well, that first one is very clearly referencing this moment with Purple Guy. Now, Purple Guy is not actually purple, of course, he is just meant to be seen as shadowy. At this point in the series, purple meant shadow. Later on, purple means agony, but I'm just getting ahead of myself. Anyway, this scene, alongside all of the rumors going around, the urban legends, all of this, well, it's starting to sound a bit familiar. What's seen in the shadows is easily misunderstood, and we're quite convinced that this game's gameplay is a dream. Wait a second, what did it say about Toy Chica's beak? Why is it on the ground? Oh, it is on the ground. What a minute detail. But yeah, if we look back at Toy Chica in FNAF 2, when she leaves the stage, her beak does suddenly vanish with no explanation. Wait a second. Toy animatronics. Why are they called that? Unless they're actually toys. Oh my god. There's no way. There's no actual way. He wouldn't do that, would he? There's no way that these games are all a dream. Well, no. So I'll tell you right now, these games are not a dream. Or at least 90% of them aren't. There are a few tiny inconsistencies, but generally, these do actually hold together quite well. Shadow Freddy and Shadow Bonnie being the only real inexplicable things, unless you go with my explanation of them just being a nightmare, which ties into Shadow Freddy, who is also called Nightmare. To brush over any inconsistency with the toy animatronics, we just put that up to the animatronics coming after the toys and being based on them. Wrap it all up cleanly. That's very nice. And about that bite, well, the year is not 1987. Probably. In an added patch, Scott made this television occasionally play a show called Fazbear and Friends, 1983. Okay, what the fuck? This is the second thing which I call bullshit on. I do not care if it doesn't make sense. I do not care if it isn't intended. To me personally, I want to say that because by the vast majority of people, this act is known as the bite of 83, but to me, this will be the bite of 87. Let me just exist in this state of wanting this to be the bite of 87. I mean, throughout the rest of the games, the bite of 87 is never shown. The promos for this game were all about the bite of 87, and I can just put this 1983 stuff up to that's when the show began. I don't care. But anyway, yeah. This is probably the bite of 83. I can't cope any longer, guys. In my head, it's the bite of 87, but in the true timeline, this is the bite of 83. This kid might be Golden Freddy. This might be before or after the puppet. I'll try and iron out as many details as possible because being real, for most fans, this is the most confusing part of the franchise. There's a lot of stuff that really contradicts here. Also notable is how the layout of Fredbear's matches the Happiest Day minigame, except it's flipped. Yeah, a lot of the jigsaw pieces don't really add up. However, I still think this game is a massive success. On to the next. Okay, so like released here was a FNAF style RPG, and I actually like it way more than most people do, but I like RPGs in general. But to be honest, there's not really anything here to talk about. It was just a spin-off. Okay, on to the real next. Seventh of October 2016. Yeah, big jump. FNAF 5, otherwise known as FNAF Sister Location. He said it. This game is completely different, and in my opinion, this is where things start to get a bit hard to keep up with. Just for extra context, just before this, Scott Cawthon had died releasing books, or at this point, just a book, called Five Nights at Freddy's: The Silver Eyes. Now, after this, books would become a mainline stay in the FNAF franchise, but at this point, they were pretty new. These books do not exist in the same universe, but they do mirror the events of the games. The Silver Eyes is a retelling more or less of the events of the first Five Nights at Freddy's, and finally gives a name to the killer, William Afton. This guy is the purple guy. Sister Location starts with a cutscene with, gasp, voice acting, where they reveal a Mr. Afton. This whole game is a departure, and the abundance of voice acting really goes to show it. The new guys on the block are the Fun Time animatronics, also known as the Fun Times. And let me tell you, playing through this game isn't a fun time. These guys are super sleek, super high tech with their movable faceplates, and they're also big as hell. The main star is Baby, Circus Baby, like 7-foot tall clown. She talks to you throughout most of the game. She's the main one, but there's also Funtime Freddy, Foxy, and Ballora. You play as Night Guard? Nope. You're sent down to the Circus Baby Pizza and Rentals. Basically an underground bunker where you need to check up on these guys to tell if they're doing okay, doing alright, you know, just to see if they're having a good time. Each night you have a new task, and after that task is complete, you head home and watch TV. Simple. This shit gonna be a breeze. Okay, so this game is called Sister Location, but is not the Sister Location mentioned in the FNAF 3 tapes. It is somewhere completely new. That Sister Location was presumably FNAF 4's Fredbear Family Diner. As I said earlier, there's a lot of voice acting, and in fact most of what you're going to be doing in this game is just listening to these people talk. There isn't really much of a gameplay loop, unlike previous games where your whole goal is to survive until 6 AM by checking cameras or closing your doors. Each night for Sister Location has different gameplay, whether that be keeping this ugly metal texture closed, or walking across the stage floor, or, well, we'll get into that. Character wise, as I said, there's Circus Baby and also Hand Unit, a sort of voice AI thing that is mostly comedic relief corporate talk. You know what I'm saying? It's like Phone Guy. Also, before each night you'll hear this child. Now, cards out on the table. I think the voice acting in this series kind of blows. Very personal to me. Nobody else seems to voice this, but I have to say it. Scott Cawthon's Phone Guy I hold as like the pinnacle, and Hand Unit I can take him or leave him. Actually, nah, he's alright. But Baby, this voice acting takes away from any fear I felt whatsoever. It's just goofy. It doesn't scare me, and it doesn't help that we barely actually get to see Baby at all. Also, this William Afton voice is just fucking funny.
She can dance. She can sing. She's equipped with a built-in helium tank for inflating balloons right at her fingertips.
He's British. The problem with Sister Location is that it's basically all just one cutscene, which is good for your first time round, but when you want to replay these games, there's not much replay value, let's just say that. These gameplay sections of going across the hallway are kinda cool. They harken back to that Weeping Angel style horror I mentioned in my previous videos, but they're gimmicky. Baby does not actually show up as an enemy. You see her once throughout the whole game and it's just her shell. Kinda underwhelming. After playing through it for the first time, most of the scenes are scripted, so you won't get got by them as much. Then there's this night where you're stuck inside a spring lock suit, but you've got to keep the locks wound. This is a pretty good idea, and it is very difficult, and if the gameplay was more like this consistently, I wouldn't really have these problems. This section is also pretty good where you've got to reroute the power, and it all comes to a climax in the final nights where a few things happen. After having 4 nights of fun, you are led into the scooping room. You see out of the window that each of the animatronics have had their innards scooped out and have formed to become Ennard. But they need someone to help them escape. So, guess who's lined up next to get scooped? It's you! Ouch. So yeah, we got scooped. And Ennard has hopped into our body and our eyes are purple. Ah, fuck's sake. So yeah, the law's pretty simple, right? No. We got some more secrets to go through though. Namely, if you look at the schematics of the building, you will see that there's this secret private room hidden away. To unlock it, you need to win this minigame where you play as Baby. At the end of that, we see this. Where Baby chomps a kid. By the way, this was the design change that people were worried about Mr. Afton. The Fun Times have big ass holes in their stomachs that open up and eat kids, which is what happened to this girl who is the daughter of Mr. Afton. The girl possesses Baby as shown by her eye color changing from blue to green, and the rest is speculation. Either way, after winning that game, you get into the locked room and you're back in good old FNAF style gameplay, with Ennard tracking you down. This is a good section of the game, probably my favourite, although I do wish there was a version where instead of it being Ennard, it was all of the animatronics. I really wish these Fun Times had more of a time to shine, especially Ballora, who at least has a cool jump scare animation, and Baby, who doesn't even have a jump scare animation at all. In the teasers for this game, Ennard was shown early with "There's a piece of me in every body," as well as Circus Baby's pizza being closed due to gas leaks. Circus Babies was shut down, not the rentals, the actual restaurant, after 1 day. This is the day where that kid died, and after that they were all thrown underground. There's also a Chica's Party World out there as a separate restaurant, which is why she's not here. After beating the Knights in sister location, we get a few more cutscenes. These ones showing a guy walking down the street happily, then a little less happily, and then a little more deadly. Yeah, bro is dead. And purple? Huh? And then...
You won't die, you won't die, you won't die, you won't die, you won't die.
Okay, what the fuck? But wait, there's more.
Father, it's me, Michael. I did it. I found it. It was right where you said it would be. They were all there. They didn't recognize me at first, but then they thought I was you. And I found her. I put her back together, just like you asked me to. She's free now. But something is wrong with me. I should be dead, but I'm not. I've been living in shadows. There is only one thing left for me to do now. I'm going to come find you. I'm going to come find you.
Okay, you know what I said about FNAF voice acting? Well, this guy is the exception. That scared the shit out of me. Incredible voice acting, even I have to admit it. So the main character of this game is Michael. We knew that the hand unit had Mike written on it, but is Michael purple guy? I mean, he literally is purple. His eyes were purple as well. Michael is purple guy. Well, no. Okay, time to explain. Michael is William Afton's son and brother to A, this girl who got by Baby, and B, the crying child from FNAF 4, which makes you this guy, and also William Afton, the man who killed all them kids. But he isn't actually purple. Remember what I said earlier? At this point in the games, purple meant shadow, and later it means agony. William is a purple guy because he is cloaked in shadow. Michael is a purple guy because he is actually purple. He's a dead corpse. So the real story of this game goes as follows. Michael is sent down by his father William, the murderer, to check up on his sister who is currently in Baby, but the animatronics form to become Ennard, break out, scoop him in order to use him as a skin suit until they just shoot on out of him. He somehow survives and then says that he's coming to find his father. Also important, they thought I was you. Now, time for secrets. If you input 1983 into this keypad, in the secret room, you will see the FNAF 4 rooms, the same ones from the gameplay. And if you look here, it's the golden Fredbear plush from those games, with a microphone by it. So this guy, who we assumed is his imaginary best friend, is instead the person from this bunker talking to him through the microphone. Mystery solved, I guess. What's not solved is, how is this place real? I thought FNAF 4 was meant to be a dream. We all thought FNAF 4 was meant to be a dream. If you look at the schematics of the building, however, you can see above the bunker, there is the FNAF 4 house. That's the layout right there. Looking back at the designs of the nightmares and the fun times, you will notice one major similarity. The stomachs. Stomach mouths, stomachs that open up. But how? Are these guys real? Well, maybe. In a way, they are. What they look like? No. There is no way these guys actually look like this. But there is definitely something that comes to attack this child. You can see on the motion scanners. But why do they look like this? Time to turn back to the books. The second in the series, the twisted ones, also talk of animatronics that have movable faceplates with stomach mouths that look like nightmares. Wow, that's useful. That is exactly the description that we needed matched. So how? Well, the answer are these little things called illusion discs. They cause the nightmares and ghostly, dreamlike imagery. But as I said, these books only mirror the games. They're not actually canon. We have no evidence that these illusion discs exist in the game. Except, oh wait, we do. Right there. When we open up Funtime Freddy, there's an illusion disc right there. Bada bing, bada boom. Solved. FNAF, not a dream. Confirmed. Now, here we start to get quite a lot of answers. Quite a lot of things start coming together. Don't see how? Let me explain. One big meme question asked a lot, especially back with the first one, is why the fuck do we even work here? Who would work in this death trap? Well, the answer is Michael Afton. Michael is the protagonist of, so far, every single FNAF game. Mike Schmidt, huh? Fritz Smith? These guys are all Michael, all pseudonyms. He's going around trying to find his father, looking through all of these locations, not realizing that he's actually locked up in the back room of the original location. Evidence for this is also the fact that you are told quite frequently that you are fired because of odor, which, yeah, this guy smells. So you're searching for him until Fazbear Fright, where you actually find him, and subsequently burn him to the ground. But what about FNAF 4? Well, you play as Michael too. Of course, these sections are Michael's brother, but the main gameplay section you play, you are Michael, trapped in this room while being terrorized by nightmares from the man in the basement, the father, the purple guy. Basically, things are looking like this timeline wise. Purple Man works at Fredbear's family diner, probably as an owner, but maybe as a security guard. Now either he creates Circus Baby, who eats his daughter, or equally tragically, his son gets chomped in a bite of 80 something. Either way, Michael as a child is tormented by nightmare animatronics as the murderer below stays in the bunker. Because he's a sick freak, he goes and kills again in the first Freddy Fazbear location using a golden suit. But he gets caught, goes to prison, but gets off early because he was in the back room when he lured them, therefore not on the cams. Freddy Fazbear gets shut. While it is shut and William Afton is in prison, he asks his son to go down to find his daughter down in the bunker, resulting in the events of sister location. William gets out of prison and goes back to the location of the murders, the now abandoned Freddy's, and is greeted by the spirits when he tears the suits apart. He goes into the back room, gets springtrapped, and is then locked away for the next 30 years. Years later, Freddy Fazbear has its grand reopening, using the spare parts from the animatronics to make a whole new batch. Michael, now looking very purple, is trying to find his father, so he works here until he gets fired. Bite of 87 happens, and so the place shuts down. Years after that, the original Freddy's place gets reopened with a smaller budget in the original location, the same building. Michael goes there too and finds the spirit of his brother telling him, "It's me." He gets fired and eventually the place goes out of business naturally due to the stigma of it all. Many years later, Michael returns to Fazbear Frights, where he finally does find his father. Most of the spirits get put to rest, and Michael ends things once and for all, burning the place down, except good old Springtrap survives. And what about all of the innards? And the puppet? They're all still running about. So there's a few loose ends, but I'm sure that's pretty much all the end of it. The 4th of December, 2017. Scott Cawthon had been radio silent. No teasers, no nothing. Most assumed that the games were done. Books and stuff had still been coming out, but for a long while, there was nothing. Until randomly, on Steam, a free game release called Freddy Fazbear Pizzeria Simulator. Seemingly a small arcade game, bit of nothing really. And upon first playing, nothing was what it really seemed to be. Well, until...
Begin tape. Leaving dead space. 3, 2, 1.
FNAF 6, baby. You are called back to run your very own Freddy Fazbear franchise. You run your own pizzeria and each night settle the lawsuits and also do your salvage. Things appear outside and by order of paragraph 4 you are contractually obliged to bring them in, do some tests before marking them as salvage. Then you also have to go into your office and buy necessary supplies. Then once that's done you can log out and move on to your next day. There's a lot here. First of all, gameplay. Yes, a third of this game is playing a pizzeria tycoon. Quite a genre shift, but I actually really like it. It isn't very complex, but for a free game, it's got quite a lot of customization, and you can do some pretty cool stuff. While in this phase, you can buy arcade cabinets with special games, which in themselves include secrets, which I will go into later. But after that is the office phase, which is your typical FNAF style gameplay, except no cams this time. Instead, it's all sound based. To both of your sides, there are vents, which animatronics will climb at you from. You have a map of where you are. You use this to put sound lures around to keep the animatronics away from you while you do your tasks as quickly as you can so you can get the hell out of here. The salvage phase is what adds more animatronics into each night, increasing the difficulty curve. There is Scrap Baby, Molten Freddy, this guy Lefty, whoever the fuck that is, and boy, what the hell, boy, Scrap Trap. What did they do to Springtrap? Look at the top of his head. But you may be confused by who two of these guys are. Well, basically, Baby and the rest of Ennard had a bit of a falling out, splitting into two groups, Baby and the rest, with the rest becoming Molten Freddy. Scrap Baby is of course Circus Baby, but made out of scrap. But who is Lefty? Well, if you look at these schematics here and this image, you can see that Lefty is something used to catch the puppet. And if you're paying attention, these are all of the characters who didn't get an end in FNAF 3. Now after beating the final night, you have all of the loose ends in one place. I think it's time we end this.
Now we can do what we were created to do. and be complete. I will make you proud, Daddy.
Hey, yo!
Connection terminated. I'm sorry to interrupt you, Elizabeth, if you still even remember that name. But I'm afraid you've been misinformed. You are not here to receive a gift, nor have you been called here by the individual you assume, although you have indeed been called. You have all been called here, into a labyrinth of sounds and smells, misdirection, and misfortune. A labyrinth with no exit, a maze with no prize. You don't even realize that you are trapped. Your lust for blood has driven you in endless circles, chasing the cries of children in some unseen chamber, always seeming so near, yet somehow out of reach. But you will never find them. None of you will. This is where your story ends. And to you, my brave volunteer, who somehow found this job listing not intended for you. Although there was a way out planned for you, I have a feeling that's not what you want. I have a feeling that you are right where you want to be. I am remaining as well. I am nearby. This place will not be remembered, and the memory of everything that started this can finally begin to fade away, as the agony of every tragedy should. And to you monsters trapped in the corridors, be still, and give up your spirits. They don't belong to you. For most of you, I believe there is peace, and perhaps more, waiting for you after the smoke clears. Although for one of you, the darkest pit of hell has opened to swallow you whole. So don't keep the devil waiting, friend. This ends, for all of us, in communication.
Okay, so who is this mysterious tape guy? Well, first things first, he's not Phone Guy. Phone Guy is dead, sadly. By the name HRY, and the fact that the books mirror the games, he is most likely called Henry, and is the father of this girl who died and became the puppet. He most likely owned Fredbear's Family Diner, while William Afton, the killer, owned Freddy Fazbear's Pizza. Sister companies. Partners. Although, unlike William Afton, Henry is not an evil bastard. Many also say that Henry went to prison and not William, because he got framed. I like that. I think that works. It explains why he was out of the story for so long. But I think everything here is basically tied up nicely. You are, of course, Michael, the same protagonist as you are every game. You burn too. So, Afton, as he is called in the credits, the puppet, Michael, Henry, and all of Enid get burned, meaning that there are now no characters unaccounted for. So surely there are no mysteries left, right? Well, actually no. I think that for me and for most people, this is the end of the timeline. For me, this is a very satisfying conclusion. I actually tuned out of FNAF around 2016 and only came in and out up until around the present day. So it's a lot easier for me to just accept this as my ending. I have very few questions. I mean, to me, this timeline of events is very satisfying. There's a confusing bit here where the crying child does possess Fredbear, but then another kid dies and gets stuffed into Golden Freddy. Now, Golden Freddy isn't Fredbear, but I think their parts were used for each other, which means that technically two spirits are possessing this robot, which, you know, takes a bit of suspension of disbelief, but I think it works within the logic of this universe. I mean, look at the franchise we're talking about, people. There is evidence for it, like only one of Golden Freddy's lights being unlit and stuff like that. I'm content with that. There's also a bit of ambiguity at the start on whether the inciting incident is Baby killing William's daughter or William's son dying, and either way, I think it works. The evidence for the sister dying first is that frequently throughout FNAF 4, the Fredbear toy reminds the child of what he saw, what he's seen, the reason why he's so scared of the robots. Also, the sister's room is empty. This all implies that he witnessed his sister getting got. But the evidence for the brother dying first is that at this point in the timeline, Baby being created for capturing kids has no motive, unless William Afton is just some sick bastard who wanted to kill kids, which maybe, but most people think it's the rage of losing his son that started his bloodlust in the first place. I lean more to the daughter dying first, but really I don't know, and I don't mind. To me, it doesn't change my understanding or appreciation of the story. But there is more. Remember those minigames I mentioned earlier? Well, these are full of secrets. First off, Data Egg. This guy's gotta be up to something. I mean, just look at him. What a weirdo. And sure enough, if you buy this geezer and go back to your office, you can find some schematics. These reveal not only the truth of Lefty, but also the truth of the Scooper. It's a remnant injector. Okay, now what is remnant? Remnant is the spirit that allows people to be possessing the animatronics. This presumably answers how Michael was able to survive after having his innards scooped out. He was injected with remnant. This also answers like 10 other questions, but I didn't even ask them earlier, so I won't even bother. Also, agony is like remnant, except it's caused by pain. At this point in the franchise, purple usually represents agony, which is why my theory is that the reason Michael survived is because he's powered by agony. Well, now that that's out of the way, we can move on. This minigame shows how this child was lured away by Springtrap. Most people think that this girl becomes Chica after getting killed. Not too many questions here, it's pretty straightforward. This is the time Afton gets into a costume and lures kids to the back room to do a bit of stabby. This security puppet one shows how the puppet possesses this kid, the same one shown from FNAF 2. But then there's this one, Midnight Motorist. It's a racing game until at the very end, you go down into this path and... Okay, so you're driving. There's 3 places you can go. To this place Junior's, your house, or this extra hidden place where there's a mound in the ground. Things of note. You are orange, but the car you're driving is the same one that purple guy uses in these cutscenes. It's raining, just as shown in the puppet minigame, and the title of this game is shown in the files as Late That Night. You are playing as William Afton, right after killing the kid that would become the puppet. When he gets into his house, he walks past someone and goes to a locked room. He shouts at his kid before going outside, going out back, seeing a smashed window and footsteps, as well as an animatronic footstep. He says he's gone to that place. He won't be happy when he gets back, and that's where it ends. So, what the fuck? Okay, I'm not gonna pretend like I know what any of this means. First of all, Junior's? Okay, so either this is just a bar, and it's meant to show that he's drunk, you know, reasonable, or it's the FNAF 1 location which is currently shut. It's at this moment in the tapes. Timeline of events would presumably be, he killed the 5 kids, Chica first in the Spring Bonnie costume, then that kid was outside, so he killed her as well, and then he drove in a circuit and came back round to avoid suspicion. This would also work with Chica's line, I was the first, you know, ties back into the killer returns to the scene of the crime type thing, but also it doesn't work for quite a couple reasons. You can see why. So the theories are this. This is either FNAF, FNAF 2, this is a bar, or some random 4th location. Either way, shit's confusing. This mound is also confusing. In the books, the Twisted ones, the Twistic animatronics, which are basically the mixture of the Nightmare and Fun Times, bury themselves underground exactly like this, meaning this could be one. It could also be a grave, and it could also be the way to the underground bunker. I don't think it's a grave because we see other graves which show each of the 5 characters, including Golden Freddy, whose grave would be William Afton's son, but it could also be the grave for his daughter, I guess. That makes sense. It could also be the mother, who is presumed dead, maybe divorced, but she has no real impact on the story apart from maybe being Ballora. Yeah, this minigame is confusing. Basically, I'm saying this grave could be her. Then we come back to his house. Now either this person watching TV is Michael, or this person watching TV is William Afton's wife. Depending on who that is, the person in the room could be either the crying child or Michael. So yeah, at the house, we don't know who's sitting by the TV, and we don't know who's in the room. So the answers to these, I don't know. It all depends on if that is a grave, and if that grave is the daughter's grave, or if it's the son's grave. Basically, this whole minigame is a mystery and makes no sense even 6 years later. If anybody has an answer to this game, please leave it in the comments below. I've seen so many explanations for it, and like, you know, I tried my best. This minigame is very hard. But with that, we've mostly come to the end. Midnight Motorist is the only real mystery remaining. The rest of the story has fit together like a jigsaw. We even got our answer to what was in the box. As I said, by this point, I mostly tuned out of this franchise. I kept up with it, but I wasn't as invested. 3 games came out after this, but I won't go into much detail. Ultimate Custom Night is a neat extra add-on to this game. It has some cool out-of-game stuff like what Scott did with the community while it released, but as a game, I don't find it fun or scary or anything really. It's basically an extra add-on. I'm glad people got to enjoy it, and for what it is, it's pretty good. Lore-wise, most people agree that this is either hell or purgatory for William Afton. There's some nice Easter eggs in the dialogue and also some funny stuff, but you know how I am with FNAF voice acting. Most of this stuff, I could take it or leave it. Then there was FNAF VR. Very great game, very scary game. Basically a collection of the previous FNAFs, but in VR. If you have a headset, I'd highly recommend checking this one out. It may be the best of the FNAF games overall, like as a game. After this, Scott kinda took a backseat, and I think in the next one he had basically no input at all. These games are now made by Steel Wool Studios, which have their issues, but are doing a good job, at least I think. Lore-wise though, it's there. In the intro sequence, they say that the previous games were all the work of a rogue indie game developer, basically rebooting the whole franchise with ties to the past, except they can pick and choose them now. It's not really a continuation of the same story. I mean, they literally started the game by saying this is all the work of a rogue indie game developer, and with that they also chose to bring back the killer as a computer virus or something. The minigames are very cool, but throughout there are these tapes and you listen to them and...
Hello? Can you hear me? I had to hide these logs away from the core gameplay files. They lied to us. They lied to all of us.
Holy shit, this girl's voice pisses me off. I fucking hate her voice. This is my least favorite FNAF voice acting. It actively annoys me. I cannot listen. A rogue indie game developer.
A rogue indie game developer.
Why do I sound like I have balls in my mouth? Basically, storyline wise, this game is its totally new thing. I don't really go into it, it's not important, and besides, I didn't really keep up with it. Security Breach is the latest and greatest of the FNAF games, featuring a free roam mechanic, an admittedly cool looking mall setting, and a genre switch up from horror to more sci-fi stealth. Just like the previous game, this is in the rebooted FNAF timeline, so some things remain, but this whole universe of games, for all intents and purposes, has been rebooted. Just as the genre switches, so does the target demographic, with this game clearly being aimed at children, and marketed as family-friendly horror. Apparently it has some glitches in it as well, but I've never really cared for it. I haven't watched much around it. It's not really interested me. It probably is cool despite its flaws, but I think it was made clear from the trailer and the first episode of the Markiplier playthrough I watched when it released that these games aren't for me anymore. I only managed about 10 minutes of that video. To all who enjoyed it, however, that's awesome. I hope you continue to. I hear a new game is coming out soon, in fact, alongside a remake of the first FNAF game called FNAF Plus, which looks pretty damn awesome. In short, even if I'm not a fan in the hardcore sense, I still harbour a casual enjoyment of it, and do intend to keep popping in and out of the franchise. This whole segment after FNAF 6 was more of a bonus thing, just to keep everyone up to the same speed as me. I try to keep everything at a good pace, keep the video moving on and keeping all of my grounds covered. My question to you though is, did I do a good job? If you're a FNAF aficionado, did I get everything right? Did I miss anything? Did I explain some aspects wrong? To FNAF casual fans like me, did I get across what interested us and made us enjoy these games so much in the first place, with all of its intricacies and context? And to people who watch my other content and somehow managed to make it through this video, did any of this make sense to you? And to everybody, did you enjoy the video? Don't subscribe if you don't think you'll watch, but if you want to join me on my journey through content creation, then feel free to like the video and subscribe. Well, I think I got everything covered, so...